first, thank you very much for those very kind words, Your Honor and Joanne. I'd like to welcome everybody here, thank everybody for being here, speakers, guests, hosts. Now, I'm not here to talk about the Baha'i faith. I assume people here either know a little bit about it or a lot about it. If they want to know more, if you want to know more, talk to a Baha'i or go to Baha'i.org. Instead, I'm going to talk about the question that we've been asked, which is a very difficult question, as we've been told. Reconciling human suffering and the existence of God. Now, I have to admit, I wish they had asked somebody else. And I'm actually serious, because when I look at my life, I don't feel I've ever really suffered. First, look at my skin. I have the right skin tone for North America. And I'm in good health. My family's in good health. I've never starved. I'm not a refugee. My house has never burned down. When I look around, I honestly do not believe that I have suffered in my life. Maybe a little bit of pain here and there, but nothing like what I've seen other people suffer. Which really leads me to my first question. What is suffering? I love the dictionary. It says, forced to endure loss or pain. Okay. When I think about that, it occurs to me that I can roughly divide suffering into two different types. There's natural suffering, which would be, hurricanes, earthquakes, disease. And there's self-inflicted suffering. And even in the self-inflicted, I kind of generalize that into two different kinds. There's personal suffering, which is, if I don't eat well or if I don't exercise, I will suffer from bad health. But really, it's my own fault. And then there's social suffering, the societal inflicted suffering, the suffering of poverty or of war. These are the sufferings that we inflict upon ourselves collectively. So when I think about these three very general categories and the existence of God, I can't blame God for my personal suffering, for my self-inflicted suffering. I had a friend years ago. We were talking about this exact issue, and he got so mad. For him, it was a very personal thing. He had suffered. He was beaten as a child. He said, how can there be a God who would allow my drunk father to beat me every night? I said, well, what would you have had God do? He said, well, why didn't he tell him not to do this? I pointed out that every single religious text out there says, don't be a drunkard. He did tell your father. And my friend looked so stunned when he realized that the guidance had been there. The guidance is there. All of the self-inflicted suffering, all of the social suffering, the religious texts tell us how to get past this. So really, I have no problem reconciling God with these types of sufferings. I think about my son. My son is 11 years old. And a few years ago, maybe 9 years ago, I would tell him, don't touch the hot stove. And I would tell him, if you touch the hot stove, your hand will burn. Now, I would not have taken his hand and burned it if he touched the hot stove. I know the nature of his hand. I know the nature of the stove. I knew that if he touched it, his hand would burn. I didn't want to see him suffer. So I told him, don't touch the hot stove. And yet we often think of God as this divine punisher. that if we touch our hot stove, God will burn our hand. And I don't think that's the case. I think God's a loving father, a loving mother, a loving parent who warns us, don't do this because I don't want to see you suffer. But then I have to go back to that first set of sufferings, the natural ones. Earthquakes. The very real occurrence here. Where I grew up, it was tornadoes. How do we reconcile the suffering through nature with God? And again, I like to think about things simplistically. I'm a very simple person. If you've ever talked to me privately, you know I like things easy. And I think there's only two ways that I can reconcile God with this sort of suffering. The first is he's either a mean, vindictive God, which I don't think is the case, or there's a deeper purpose for the suffering. And when I think about the deeper purpose, I think about when I feel pain, when I exercise. If I don't feel pain in my muscles when I'm exercising, I know that I have not exercised enough. I know that I need to push myself a little bit further. But not so far that I strain a muscle, not so far that I rip the muscles. But that bit of pain is what makes me stronger. When you're growing a garden, the plants that you prune are the ones that are going to give the most bountiful fruit. When we look around society, we can see that those societies that have suffered the most are the ones that have given the greatest fruits to humanity. So today, I was talking with my son earlier. This is what I do when I'm faced with a difficult question. I ask him. And I said, you know, we are on the verge of suffering. As humanity. We just need to look around. Climate change, economic crises, the rise in racism and various prejudices that are happening all over the world. We can see that there is great suffering that is going to happen soon. And we as humanity, we either learn through our own idiocy, through making our own silly mistakes, or we learn by somebody telling us. But really, we learn by the first. We learn through our mistakes. And I was reading a letter from Shoghi Effendi, which I'm going to close with, just a very short passage. He has gone on for 20 pages about this great society that we are moving towards, a great global society in which we will all care for each other and love each other and communicate. He goes on for 20 pages. And he says, for the revelation of so great a favor, a period of intense turmoil and widespread suffering would seem indispensable. Such moral and social gloom as can alone prepare humanity for the prize she is destined to inherit. I think sometimes to appreciate the great bounties that we receive in our lives, sometimes we have to suffer first.